the slides. Hopefully you can see that on the screen. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. So yeah, the topic this month is all about behaviour change and influencing others. So we did a champion survey and kind of floated the idea of running these clinics and suggested a few sessions and asked for votes. And this came out as one of the top topics. And I think it's absolutely central to the Our Future First programme, and sometimes one of the more difficult areas to influence, because we're all individuals, we're all unique, we all have different values, different priorities. And so it's fundamentally important to creating a culture of sustainability within the university, but can sometimes feel a bit challenging or tricky to address. So we've tried to just include some sort of simple tips here, and these can be used in a number of ways. But as I said, we'll have a Q&A at the end, and take any questions on other areas people would like to cover. So in terms of an agenda, we'll just start with a bit of a context, and then we'll move into developing a sustainability mindset, because very often this is about a mindset thing. We will look at what the golden rules are for behaviour change, and then work through those, and then end with a bit about the importance of collaboration before moving on to our Q&A. So just in terms of context, some of you will have seen this before, some of you won't. I thought it worth repeating even for those who have seen it, because it gives some really important context to kind of where the programme came from, but also when you're thinking about behaviour change, the fact that you have to think wider than just sustainability. So this is quite focused on energy, but similar principles apply to other areas of sustainability. But traditionally, when you've looked at energy, either as a government or a policymaker or as a sustainability professional, the focus has tended to be on the cost and affordability of that energy, whether it's sustainable, so are we able to get it from low carbon sources, and is it secure? Do we have enough of it, or are the lights going to go out? So that's tended to be the kind of focus, and our team as sustainability professionals have probably been guilty of focusing a bit more on this side of the trilemma in the past. But we recently attended a presentation by Octopus Energy, which is where this concept came from. And they had done some research on energy as a service. So energy as a service, providing lighting, heating, amenities to building users. So we can't really understand what that needs to meet without understanding the requirements of those building users. So their research delved into what was most important to those customers or building users, and they found that convenience, comfort, and cost were the three key things. And that's not to say that some people weren't also interested in the other aspects on the left-hand side of this graphic, but most consistently, when looking at building users and customers, they were interested in the items on the right-hand side. And obviously you can see cost and affordability overlaps both. And so it really kind of highlighted us this need to bring together perhaps the more technical solutions with the people solutions. And this is where behaviour change is really, really important, and understanding what matters to other people, so that the solutions we put in place are not very narrowly focused, and where possible, they address as many of these items as they can. So in terms of influencing others, we believe it's very much a case of trying to develop a sustainability mindset. And this is kind of both in ourselves, but gradually nurturing others to try and do the same. So our aim is to try and get everybody working together to create collective change through lots of small actions, just those small everyday things everyone can do, which collectively could have quite a big impact. And really, the mantra which Jackie and our team came up with, which really encapsulates this, is, no one can do it all, but everyone can do something. And that's really what we want to try and get as a mindset. How we do that, though, can be quite challenging. And for us, it's about really just trying to integrate sustainability into the everyday language and conversations that are happening within your department. So it's about trying to start facilitating that engagement with your colleagues in your school or your function. So it could be that you add sustainability to a regular meeting agenda as an item which now gets discussed. If you have a departmental newsletter, it could be that sustainability gets featured into that newsletter. It could be incorporated into existing training or inductions, and importantly, just included in those everyday conversations that we have with colleagues where it's appropriate to do so. And also, if we have any processes as a department, just thinking about, well, does sustainability have a place in these? Very often there might be a focus on health and safety or data security or those kind of things, which very naturally everybody has to think about, but we would really urge for sustainability to be given that same kind of attention. So really, it's about just trying to normalize sustainability in our everyday language, our everyday conversations, our everyday thinking and decision making, and that starts with us. So just trying to find those opportunities to weave this in, and so it just becomes a normal part of everybody's day-to-day lives, everybody's working considerations, and that's how we start to develop this sustainability mindset, rather than kind of seeing sustainability as a separate thing that I need to go and do on a different day. I need to allocate this amount of time to it. It's about just trying to weave it in to what we're already doing, and developing that mindset, and then it becomes much easier for people to come up with their own ideas and initiatives. We also know that behaviour change is very challenging. Humans are very good at forming habits, and it can be quite difficult to break those habits. And we all have, it's very understandable that we all have different world experiences, which means we have different values, different drivers, different ways of doing things. But there are some models out there for kind of looking at simple ways to try and encourage behaviour change. And we've included here James Clear's 4 Laws of Behaviour Change. So this comes from his book, Atomic Habits. And we've used this as a bit of a framework for some of the things that you can do if you're trying to influence sustainability within your school, department, or any other environment. Some of the things you can do to try and encourage people to adopt the sustainable behaviour or the sustainable option. So his 4 laws are: make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, and make it satisfying. So we'll have a little look into these in a bit more depth. But really, just to sum up, I think the kind of key takeaway is we want to make the appealing option the sustainable one. So in some instances, it's not about removing choice completely. It's about potentially still giving a choice, but making sure that where there's more than one option, we're trying to make the appealing one the sustainable one. And the second thing is, it's really about trying to maximize all of the benefits, so not just the sustainability benefit, and remove the barriers which exist. So we'll just explore this in a bit more detail. So starting with making it obvious. The first thing is just to communicate it. Sometimes there are really good ideas that had initiatives that are set up, but they're just not well communicated. So there's a number of ways you can communicate about sustainability. We have the university sustainability comms, which talks about some of the bigger initiatives happening kind of widespread across the university. So if you're able to share that through your own departmental communications channels, that might reach a wider audience. I mean, we share stuff on the staff portal, and we have a sustainability newsletter, but not everybody is going to see that. It may be that for some people, departmental communication is more effective. So just sharing that, and if you want to, we're happy to share our comms plan, and you can see what's coming up in that respect. The second thing is to create your own. So again, using your own departmental channels, but creating your own sustainability comms, because the more you can make it department specific, the more people will be able to engage and relate to it. So it might be that you come up with some initiatives specifically that apply to your department or your building or your processes, and those are likely to be much more engaging than some of the generic stuff. So creating your own and not being afraid to do that. And again, we're always here to support if you've got some ideas and you want to run them by us. And then the third comment would be not to only rely on digital media, and just to get out there and speak to people as well. Something we found, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, sometimes those conversations evolve into areas that an email or a newsletter just wouldn't take you, and you can bounce ideas off of each other. You can really listen to what matters to people, hear their objections, refine your idea a bit more, taking on board their feedback, and really create that buy-in. So the first part of making it obvious is to communicate it. The second thing you can do is try and embed cues once you're implementing an initiative. So you might decide to use signage. Signage can be very effective, especially in the beginning of an initiative, although it can over time become just kind of background wallpaper. So think about how you're using it and when you're using it. But also using physical cues. So, for example, I won't go into too much detail on this, but we've had a lot of inquiries about recycling soft plastics, and at the moment, it's not viable for the university to recycle that directly. But that's not to say we can't make use of the supermarket facilities that offer this service. So some departments have set up their own soft plastics collection, and they take it in turns of taking that to a supermarket to be recycled. So an example of a physical cue would be putting that soft plastics bin right next to the other bins rather than putting it somewhere totally not obvious. And then when people are going to throw away their rubbish, it's much more obvious, and it's convenient, and it's easy because it's where they would normally put their rubbish anyway. It's just putting it into a different bin. And another way of embedding cues is to kind of link your initiatives in with existing processes and routines where you can. So if you already have a process or a particular operation within your department, if you can just make a small tweak to add a sustainable initiative in, again, that tends to be much more obvious to people than starting something completely from new. So that's another way. And then the third way to make it obvious is to model it yourself. So just all of us trying to adopt the behaviours we promote. And what this does over time is, as you bring others on board and they start to model it, we create that social proof. So the more people that are taking part in a particular initiative, the more people that do it visibly, the more it becomes that's the social norm. That's the way we do things around here. So again, to give a couple of examples, when we moved to the scheme to try and encourage use of reusable cups in the cafes on campus, more and more people now walk around with reusable cups, and that's almost become the social proof and the norm. And the same with the kind of wider UK scheme on carrier bags, and charging for carrier bags. It's become much more socially normal to take your own carrier bags rather than buying new ones. So anything like that you can do, again, makes it obvious, because it's out there. It's very visible to everyone. Moving on to the second rule, then, making it attractive. So this is about emphasizing the benefits and finding the win-wins. So some people will be totally bought into the sustainability benefit, but as we spoke about before, some people, there may be other drivers and other benefits that they're trying to prioritize, and many of the initiatives that we run for sustainability have other benefits. So if we can take the time to identify what those other benefits are and promote them, we may tap into a motivation from somebody that's not sustainability related, but still gives them a really good reason to participate in this scheme. So some of the examples of these other benefits are, if we were upgrading some equipment, they might benefit from newer, more functional equipment, and that might be more important to them than the sustainability benefit, but there's still a sustainability benefit. Or it could be improved comfort. It could be a cost saving, meaning there's budget to spend elsewhere. It could be about the well-being of that space, perhaps improving air quality or something like that. Or it could be that it's a more attractive space. If we were trying to get people to kind of co-work in a space so we could shut off the heating to a particular area, there might be an argument to put something in that space to make it attractive, maybe free coffee or something like that, because it means that people are going to be less begrudging about leaving their normal space because there's a really good reason to go to the new space because they're going to get free coffee or whatever it happens to be. Making it fun is another way that we can make it attractive. Enjoyment of something tends to make it memorable. And again, just to give like an example from the energy officer's own previous experiences, Sam, who unfortunately couldn't join us today, has previously done some work where just a simple thing about switching off PCs and switching off screens and things. They did an initiative where they would go around and anyone who had switched off their PC and screen was left some chocolate on their desk and a note thanking them for turning it off. And anyone who had left them on was left a note saying, you know, you didn't get any chocolate because you didn't turn it off this time. And then it was repeated next time with the hope that that kind of fun element and that little treat or reward would encourage more people to do it. And you know, you can be really creative with this. We know about one organization who used Smarties and they put on the note, you're a Smartie, thanks for turning off your computer. But you could use fair trade chocolate if you want to also promote fair trade. You could, you know, just leave a really nice note, whatever works. It's totally open to your creativity. And there's loads of other ways you can make things fun. Yeah, your creativity can kind of take you anywhere with this. So try and have a think about that if you're rolling things out.
Just to interrupt on that point.
Yeah.
I'm going to put a little video clip into the chat for people. It's about the theory of fun and making things look attractive differently. You may have already seen it. It's trying to get people to stop using an escalator, but without taking the escalator away. I will post it in there in your own time. You get a chance to watch that.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. And then the other item I would say that falls under making it attractive is making it safe. Because when we are making change, it can bring up discomfort or a fear in people for a number of different reasons, and we can't really generalize, but sometimes it can be as simple as feeling like they're not able to challenge the norm, or feeling like because they're doing something different, they're stepping outside of that social norm. So anything we can do to help remove that fear. And that could be by modeling the behavior ourselves and showing it's safe to do this. It could be by reminding them that there's buy-in from the university for being more sustainable. I mean, we had a VC talk on sustainability just a week or so ago. So this has really got the buy-in from the top. Or it could be kind of sharing your own stories where actually you tried something and something went wrong, but that's all part and parcel of change and learning. And I've just included this Einstein quote here about, you know, anyone who's never made a mistake has never tried anything new. So just trying to really encourage people not to fear it, but understanding it where you can in a bit more depth, what their fears are, and where you can, helping to make it feel as safe and comfortable as possible for them to take a behavior that might be something quite different to what they normally do. You know, even if it's something like they stop driving and they start cycling, they could have some fears around that, and you could point them in the direction of the cycle safety course that we run for free, the bike maintenance we offer, all of those things. So yeah, making it attractive is about emphasizing the benefits, making it fun, and making it safe. The third one was making it easy. So this really ties back into that convenience that we talked about right back at the beginning on that energy trilemma graphic. So to make it convenient, tie it in with existing processes and operations wherever you can. For example, we were speaking with a champion from a science school recently, and they were saying, well, we already do an induction for labs focused on health and safety. We could just add sustainability into that, and that's absolutely perfect. Like, don't create a whole new sustainability induction, just tie it in with something that's already happening. It doesn't have to be a massive change. It can just slot into something that's already working. It's really convenient for the people because they haven't got to go to different training. They can just do it all as part of one. So where possible, try and tie things in with your existing operations. If there's any kind of physical item involved, make it easy to access and close by. So this probably relates again to that example about the soft plastic bins. You know, if you are going to do that as a department, you want to, you know, people are probably less inclined to go and walk to the supermarket themselves. But if you have a central bin that's easily accessible in your department and you're happy to create a rota of one person each week takes that to the supermarket, you're much more likely to get people to buy in than if everyone individually has to go and walk to the supermarket. And where you can, make it something that's as quick to do as possible. Everybody has day jobs and time pressures, and the quicker we can make it and the easier we can make it, the more likely it is that people will participate. And the second way of making it easy is to address barriers, and this really starts with listening to people, because often, Luke and I know this, we've tried lots of initiatives and we're met with a yes but, and it's very easy to just kind of either dismiss the idea and go, well, we can't do it, there was a barrier, or to feel frustrated and say, but they don't understand. But actually, it's us not understanding the other person. Everybody's views come from a valid reason, and often we don't know the intricacies of that person's job or their process or their life values and things. And so it really starts with listening to people, because you can't challenge something if you don't understand why it's a barrier to them, why it's important to them. And you might conclude they've got a really valid point, or you might be able to address their concern in a way that makes it accessible and removes that barrier to them, for them. So listening to people is really important. Keeping things simple, try not to overcomplicate things. The more complicated it is, the less likely people are to do it. It just becomes another barrier. And I've just shared here the top 3 barriers that were highlighted in a recent staff survey we ran on sustainability. So the first one was a lack of collective action to make change, and that's exactly what we hope to address through this programme. And some of the ideas we've given here are all about that collaboration and making people feel part of a bigger initiative, taking action together, giving them support. So hopefully we can address that one together through this programme. People said they were unsure what they should be doing. So there's lots of training available you can signpost them to. And as I said at the start, a really easy thing to do would be to join these monthly drop-in sessions. They're just about 45 minutes long on Teams, so hopefully quite easy and accessible. And they can also come to us anytime if they've got specific questions. We're always happy to set up a chat, or they can just drop us an email. So if people are unsure, just try and signpost them to some of the resources available, or again, sharing your own knowledge with them can be really helpful. And the third one was lack of time. And I think this really takes us back to that point at the beginning about trying to see sustainability as a mindset, not rather than seeing it as it's something else I have to go and do at a set time separately. Just think about what are we already doing, and how can we make tweaks to this or changes to this to embed sustainability. And hopefully that helps to address that lack of time, because it's about embedding it to what we're already doing, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel. And that's not to say sometimes we don't need more radical change, and again, that's what our team are here to support with if there does need to be a bigger project. But many things can just be changes to existing processes, and just giving a bit of thought to what you're already doing and how it can be changed.
Some of it might just be that we just need to nudge it along a little bit at a time, eke away at it, and we get there in the end.
Yeah. So finally, make it satisfying. So if there's a way to link it to social value, this can be very powerful, because, and again, this starts with listening to people and understanding their reality and what do they care deeply about, and how can we tie sustainability in with this. And for some people, it may be sustainability itself. It could be the impact on the planet. For others, it's the impact of climate change on humankind in terms of those potential natural disasters and things that may come about, and the overheating. For some, it could be about improving local services. Improving the local bus service would help convenience them, but would also make travel more sustainable for people. It could be cost of living, or equality and diversity, and the fact that things like climate change are not going to have an equal impact on everybody across the world. Some of the people who are already most disadvantaged will also be most disadvantaged by climate change. So just trying to understand people's social values, and where possible tie that link in between what we're doing in sustainability and some of these other values, can be really powerful. Possibly less powerful, but still a really good way to motivate people is through rewards and incentives. And these don't have to be big things. A simple thank you when somebody has taken the time to join an initiative can be really powerful. Just that acknowledgement that they've noticed that this is something you're trying to implement. They've taken the time and the space to think about how they can implement it. If they do something a bit bigger, maybe showcasing their good work through your internal department comms. And also reciprocating support, if they support you with something, supporting them with something in return. Or there's the option of the small treats we talked about in the example of, putting chocolate on desks and that kinds of things. So these only have to be small things. But when you make it satisfying for somebody, they're much more likely to continue this behavior rather than it be a one-off. So just to kind of tie up, it's all about collaboration. So it's about listening to each other, sharing ideas, teaching what we already know, but learning from others, not assuming we have all the answers, and trying to hear other people's points of views, inspiring others by sharing stories and modeling good initiatives, connecting with others. And over time, seeing that evolution, and hopefully then that allows us to kind of celebrate some of the good wins that happen. In terms of collaboration, I've just shared this model, which came from some training I did on community organising, which is all about creating change in communities. And they emphasise these two kind of models of teams. And what they were saying is this dot model often ends up resulting where you have one person who really starts an initiative and they end up becoming the focal point, and everybody takes everything to them and everything sits with them to do, and it kind of falls apart quite quickly because that one person is only one person and they can't do everything themselves, and there's not the strong relationships and support there from others. So they advocate more of the snowflake model, which is where rather than kind of having one leader, you're developing other leaders within your department, and you're developing good relationships, and it doesn't all sit with one person. You're empowering others to take on some of the work. And in that vein, they came up with this concept of the iron rule, that you should never do for others something they can do for themselves. And so this is about empowering others. So, it's great to get ideas from others, but if those ideas always come back to you as a central point, it's going to be really hard for you to run with them all. And it's the same for us as a team. If everything came to us, we wouldn't be able to service it. And that's why we really hope to kind of create these relationships, and yourselves as leaders out there trying to embed sustainability. So the snowflake model is really the way to go. And I've included a link here to a TED Talk, which we have shown at an event before. So some of you may have seen it before, but it really talks about that fact that the first person is only a leader once they start to get followers, and those followers become leaders themselves. And I was hoping to show it now, but we're a little running behind, a little over time. So I might show it at the end, depending on how many questions we've got. But if not, we'll send the link around, because it's only about 2 minutes, but it's really interesting. It's a bit of a silly video, but it demonstrates the point quite nicely about how you can't do it on your own, and we need this collaboration. And just to kind of emphasize that point, we've included a couple of very short examples of initiatives by others in the university. So Sarah Fincher-Maranja in School of Psychology had challenged, why are we only being given the option of buying bottled water when we're purchasing food from internal catering? And catering kind of came back and said, well, we can't supply any jugs. And she didn't stop there. She could have said, oh, I've hit a barrier, I'm going to stop there, but she didn't. And she collaborated with ourselves and with catering, and we spoke about it, and some compromises were made and a solution was found. And now there is the option for not just for bottled water, for you to have to use the hydration stations and have jugs refilled as part of catering options. And then there was another example of a drying cabinets project, which Luke worked on with Andy Whittam a while back. But there was a desire within the science school to replace their drying cabinets, but they didn't have enough funds available. A short-term solution to kind of reduce the cost and improve the energy was to install timers, which helped reduce the energy consumption and the associated costs. But because that collaboration had happened, it then sat as an opportunity on our log. And when we later applied for some Salix grant money and won it, we were able to share that grant funding with the science school, giving them better equipment as well as improving the efficiency of the equipment. And I think what this illustrates is they're two quite different projects, but there's two very consistent themes. You know, you have an idea, you will meet challenges almost always. There will always be challenges and barriers. But if you take the time to pull the right people together and collaborate, invariably you can end up with a success. It might not be exactly the success you first hoped for, but if you work through those challenges, you know, there might be a compromise, or sometimes you can remove the barrier altogether, but you ultimately end up with a win for all. And I won't go through this, but again, we've shared this with champions, but for anyone else who hasn't, this is just kind of some of the ask that we're asking of ourselves, of champions, and of everybody in the university. So the more we can kind of promote this messaging and share it, the better. So that brings us to the end. So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. And sorry we went a little over. And yeah, we'd just like to open up to any questions. I was just going to open up actually quickly with one first for Luke, because it's something we get asked a lot. And that is, people often say to us, well, this is all well and good, but where can I start? Like, what's maybe one thing I could really encourage people in my department to do that will make a big difference? So yeah, Luke, if I can put that to you, and maybe you can share one or two ideas.
I think I hope you all were able to see the Vice Chancellor's talk about sustainability a couple of weeks ago. If you didn't, I think it's probably staying on the same point about a quick action that we can all be better at doing, switching off our monitors and turning off our PCs or laptops if they're left on it overnight. Kind of a simple action. We all have the ability to do this. Okay, researchers, we know you run software and you run stuff overnight sometimes. We don't expect you to turn them off, but where you can, it's a nice, easy action, and it can be replicated. And there is a lot of people that can then do this, quite small action, and it accumulates to quite a big saving over a longer period of time. That would be my kind of course, I could say lighting, heating, I could go, but let's just focus on computers at the moment, because it seems to be in the trend of where lots of people are talking at the moment.
Yeah, and that ties in with that example of that Sam gave previously of an initiative of kind of, you know, leaving notes or treats on people's desks to kind of encourage that, and then repeating it again a couple of months later, once people know that if they do that, you know, there's that option. So that's great. So yeah, we'd just like to open up to any other questions. You can either just unmute or put them in the chat, or feedback or comments on anything that we've covered.
Following on from Luke, what Lucas just said, another thing you can do, the office you're in now, look around, and if you see a switch on with nothing plugged into it, switch it off. That is £6.50 a year for one switch. Divide that by hundreds and hundreds, and also there's a massive saving. So just look around your office now, and if you can see a 3-pin switch that's switched on, there's nothing plugged into it, just go over and switch it off.
Brilliant, thanks, Marcus. Yeah, it is surprising. Those tiny things, they almost seem inconsequential, but like you say, when you multiply them up, we've got thousands of staff and lots of buildings, and I think, yeah, that's a really good stat. And as Luke said in the VC talk recently, there was a stat given about the savings if 1,000 people turned off their monitors for an hour, you know, and it's quite surprising how the cumulative effect adds up, and that's about exactly what we're trying to embody, those small changes that everyone can do. So thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I'm gonna put Kevin on the spot, because he's commenting on me on a personal channel, but he's actually kind of highlighted quite a good point there. If a plug socket is just left on with nothing plugged into it, it won't consume energy. It's if there is anything plugged in and switched on, there tends to be something consuming. It's called vampiric energy consumption. And so this is where differentials are also. This is where we're picking on things like kettles and stuff like that. If you leave them on the plug, there is a small amount of current running through to that kettle, even though the kettle is not switched on. So there is a difference. If you unplug the devices and leave the plug on, it's not consuming anything, but it's maybe just one of those things of getting into a good habit. we talk
I
about.
apologise. I got it wrong. I'd heard the stat, and thanks, Kevin.
No, that's
Yeah.
my confusion. So yeah, I was like, oh, I there's no current. So how can they be using energy? And but I thought rather than make myself look silly, I thought I'd just ask Luke privately, and he's clarified that. So thank you, Luke.
That's
But
right.
that is useful though.
Yeah,
No, that's
it's,
really
it's all
helpful.
about if things are plugged in and they're switched on, even if they're not per se using energy in terms of you've switched the kettle to be on, there will be a current running to that device. So it's quite right. There is a cost saving to be had over a long period of year. Some people would kind of say, well, what's the point? It's only £6 for the whole year, just leaving that kettle plugged in so it's ready for whenever I need it. Is that not just a bad habit to get into?
10 items, it's £65. 100 items, it's 600.
Yeah. So
No, that's really useful. To be honest, that's something that's really interesting to know, because our kettle's only used when my parents come to visit, and I'm trying to discourage them come to visit more. So what I can then do is say, well, actually, if you visit, it's going to cost us this much if you leave the kettle just on there. So come on, cop up, give us some cash, and you can use this as a hotel like you treat us like. But no, but I think there are obviously loads of devices people have in their homes that will have those sort of things.
What I'm also going to do is I'm going to plug two things right this minute. We're obviously in a week's time, I believe, having a off face-to-face meeting. Hopefully we will have some timed plugs at that event, which we'll be handing out to champions. You can take them back, and if you want to set a timer for your microwave or your thing, so at least you know at night it's always switched off, at least that's a stepping stone in the right direction. And also we've got our Green Festival coming up in a couple of weeks, which is the 14th, 15th and 16th of November. If you have an opportunity to go into any of those events, please do. It'd be wonderful to see you there and get involved any way you can. If not, just publicising it to other people. It gives an opportunity to showcase what we're doing, how you can get involved a little bit more. And yeah, just some of the kind of things that are really going on out there. Sorry, that's my plug finished.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Yeah, and Green Festival should be really good. Jackie's put together a really good schedule, and Dominique, who's on the call here today, is going to be doing a presentation about an exhibition that she and her family have put together. I don't know if you want to say something about that, Dominique.
Yep, I can. Apologies, I'm actually sat on the floor next to my dog.
No worries at all.
So yeah, apologies for the background. So I'm going to be doing a talk on the Green Festival about the connections between the Amazon rainforest and the UK. This is because due to a personal thing, last year, two people, Dom Phillips and Bruno Pereira, were murdered in the Amazon rainforest. And Dom was my uncle. So as a result of that, myself and my family have become very involved in kind of the work that he was doing in the Amazon in terms of trying to talk with the Indigenous communities there, understand the complex issues, and provide solutions. And something that I've realised is that there's a big disconnect between the Amazon and what's going on in the Amazon and our role over here in the UK, and sort of how we can kind of mediate that disconnection in terms of our own activities. So my talk's going to be all about that, and the exhibition will be on show for that day.
Brilliant.
Thanks for mentioning, Jo.
No problem. I think it should be really interesting, and I think it's something that lots of us don't know what the impact of our actions are in the Amazon rainforest or anywhere else in the world. So yeah, it should be really interesting, and thanks for doing it. So thank you. Any other questions or comments about the behaviour change? Just saw Jackie looking forward to the talk. That's great.
Thanks, Jackie.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll wrap up there then. I will send around a copy of the slides, and I'll include the link Luke's put to the theory of fun, and the link I mentioned of the how to start a movement, which just kind of again shows that need for collaboration and working with others and having other leaders, and how collective leadership can actually create stronger change. And yeah, if anyone has any questions any other time, you know where Luke and I are, so just get in touch. Thanks for attending. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.